We are back and we are live. It is Fight IQ presented by RotoWire MMA, and on deck UFC Sao Paulo. I believe it is UFC Fight Night 137. Our main event, it has been a carousel of main events, but it's right now Thiago Santos taking on Eric Yaboy Anders. And this was supposed to be Jimmy Manoa taking on Glover Teixeira. Teixeira falls off. We get Santos. So now it's Santos Manoa. Manoa tears a hamstring running pre this card. I think he was in Brazil when it happened. And your boy steps in, and now we have Santos, and Anders. I think this is the best main event of the three. I am your host for Fight IQ, the Daily Fantasy Sniper, here with the analyst Joe Sunsu, Chris at Real Chris Olson. Guys, are you in agreement this is the best main event of the carousel that we could have gotten? I'm happiest with this main event.
I think I might have liked to see Manoa Santos. Just, Manoa's a big puncher, and I would be a little bit more confident in Santos against Manoa than I am in Santos against Anders. But no, considering how this main event fell apart several times, it's hard to find too much fault in it.
Yeah, I agree that this is one of the harder fights. This is the harder of the three fights to pick and break down. But from purely as a fan, this is the one I want to see the most. Chris, what are your thoughts on our final main event?
Yeah, no, I think this is the most intriguing one for sure because Anders actually answered a little bit of questions in that third round in his last fight where he actually got more aggressive and ended up getting the finish. So it's going to be interesting to see how he deals. I won't get into it too much now, of course, but going to be interesting to see how he deals with an opponent like Santos. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think this is a great card. This is the polar opposite of the Moscow card. I mean, you've got 14 fights. You got lots of variants, at least in my opinion. You got lots of variants. You got one double-digit favorite, which is a showcase fight. But other than that, I think you've got a fair amount of variance. And I was very clear for those who follow me on Twitter. I am playing no cash games this week. This is a 100% GPP week for me.
See, we'll get to a couple reasons why I like cash this week. There are a couple plays in that cash sweet spot in the mid-eights that I really like, so my cash lineup is coming together pretty nicely. So we will talk about that as we move through. 14 fights on this card, so guys, let's get to it. Before we do, though, I want to shout out our sponsor, RotoWire MMA. Make sure to go to rotowire.com/free. Check out all the usual premium content that RotoWires offers, not just for MMA, but for all sports, daily fantasy, season long. Got everything you need there for fantasy sports. Try it all out. 10 days, no credit card required. RotoWire MMA, make sure you like this video. If you're watching it, subscribe to the RotoWire MMA service on iTunes, to the podcast on iTunes, and give this video a thumbs up. Follow all of us on Twitter. You guys know where we are. We record these. If you're watching after the fact, 8 p.m. on Fridays. We are live, as I mentioned in the open. Type any questions. Give us some crap. There's usually a good group in there talking some smack and just having fun. And let's keep it rolling, and let's kick off the night with the biggest favorite on the card. It is, let's forget her first name, Livia Souza at 9,600, taking on Alex Astro Girl Chambers at 6,600. Souza minus 1,100, Chambers plus 900. If you've watched this Fight IQ in the past, well, first of all, thank you. We're going to change things up just a little bit in terms of, I know I'm always the one saying condensed, but I think a lot of us at this point on Fridays, we know a lot of the fight breakdown. These guys will touch on it and go through their DFS perspective, and I'm just going to kind of put a bow on it and try and keep these two lunatics in order. So now that we've given the fight intro on this one, it'd just be wrong if I didn't start off the women's MMA fight with Joe. So, Joe, how do you see Souza Chambers?
Okay, so former Invicta champ Souza, I'm speaking to, lost a close decision to Angela Hill, who's now in the UFC. Astro Girl, Chambers, Alex Chambers. Look, this is win-win for the fighters, right? Souza gets a softball for her promotional debut in her home country. Alex Chambers, don't feel sorry for her. Astro Girl, she is like an astrophysicist. That's her day job. She gets a free trip to Brazil for less than 5 minutes of work. Usually you're reticent, to put straw weights other than Jessica Andrade in GPPs because of their unlikeliness or unlikelihood of finishing. I think Souza's got a really good shot to finish this, and I think she will want to be impressive in front of her home crowd. Again, I am not playing much cash, but I think Souza is a cash lock. GPP.
Somebody actually just asked that. The problem is she's 9,600.
Yeah.
The fight is it's a 1.5, and it's like a pick of -110, 1.5.
Yeah,
so for you, cash games, and thanks for that question, David in chat.
Yeah, if you can afford her, you want to play her. I honestly think that that's a soft line for finishing. I really do think Souza will finish Chambers. Caitlin Curran was beating the shit out of Chambers before she turned it on her, and we all know how good Caitlin Curran is. So Souza here, Souza.
Chris, what do you got in our curtain jerker?
Yeah, as much as I love the contrarian stuff, I can't do it quite yet. The one thing I would think Chambers does have going for her is she likes to pressure, and Souza, we've seen her sort of just back up and shell up when she gets attacked. But the problem is that Chambers doesn't hit very hard, and her striking isn't the best to begin with. It's very wild and awkward. So and it's very one shot as well. So I think what's basically going to happen here is that Souza's going to get the fight to the ground, and once that happens, I mean, look, we saw Nadia Kassem out-grapple Alex Chambers, and I believe she's still without a submission finish on her record. So I think Souza is just going to get a submission here. I mean, there's not much more to say than that. She's great on the ground. She's got great transition. She's great at holding position. I see this fight ending in a sub for her pretty clearly.
Well, to put a bow on it, I agree. Both these guys, we should probably move on so we can get to some disagreements. I will say that 9,600 Chambers better get a first-round finish to be in the nuts lineup in GPPs, unless a few underdogs come through. But we'll get to those underdogs. I don't think it's in this next fight, though. Our second fight of the night has the second largest favorite, Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, 9,500, taking on Luigi Vendramini at 6,700. I believe Vendramini is taking this fight on short notice. Zaleski is a -840 favorite. Vendramini +660. I like the aggressive style of Zaleski. Chris, how do you see this one going?
I like Zaleski too, but I'm gonna differ from you a little bit when you say aggressive style. I mean, he tends to get caught in these wars, but I think at heart he's basically a counterpuncher. I think that's what he likes to do. I think that a lot of times we see him start out counterpunching, he lands counterpunch, and then he attacks. He attacks very well when he has his opponent hurt. But I think at his core he's a counter striker, and for that reason, I'm kind of staying away from this fight because I think he wins, but I think it's going to be pretty slow paced unless he can land the big shot. And, he could, but I don't know. I don't see a finish forthcoming. So I think I would dog or pass this, and I don't think the dog's going to win. So for me, that means I'm pretty much staying away from this.
Joe, any difference of opinion on this one?
No, I mean, there's a fair amount of risk here for DK at 9.5. You're not going to get grappling points. So to Chris's point, you need a finish. I would probably rather pay up to go to Souza or pay down and go to Du Bronx. I think there's a fair amount of risk here. Probably a safe cash play, but then again, who's got a higher upside in cash? Probably Souza. So again, I'm not sure what the field is going to be, but I'll likely be underweight to the field on Zaleski.
See, the only thing I differ with, I agree. I think we all agree how this fight's going to go, most possible outcomes. But I think most people are going to be in the same camp you guys are in. And that, game theory-wise, it makes me really like Dos Santos in tournaments. Like, he's got Du Bronx below him and Souza above him. I think he's going to be between 10 and 15% owned. I could go a little over the field and get a little bit of leverage there. He's live to a knockout for sure. He's finished guys. Could get multiple knockdowns in this fight. It's one of those. I'm considering being a shade overweight just because I think most people won't go there. And
look, I'll tell you where I am now. I'm at 20%, and I'm at 20% in my mass entry GPPs.
Yeah, I think last time I checked, I was 25 or 30, somewhere in that range. And closer to 25 just because I didn't want to double punt a lot of spots. I like the mid-range in this card, and we'll get there, and let's move on to our next fight. It is Hector Lombard, 8,400, taking on Thales Leites at 7,800. And if I remember correctly from checking a couple hours ago, we have our first case of line value on this card. Of course, I can't find the odds.
No, you are correct.
Yep, the line has flipped. Thales Leites is a minus 115 favorite.
What, it flipped?
It flipped. Leites, pretty much everywhere. On some sites, he's minus 125. 135 is the high. Whew. Lombard dog at plus 105. Look, the issue, though, is that Leites really doesn't fight at a high output. He also says he's going to retire. So keeping those two pieces of narrative, or the one piece of narrative, just statistical analysis in mind, Joe, how do you have this fight now that we have some line value to analyze?
I didn't realize how overweight I was, but I am pretty heavy on Leites here. I mean, I created all my an unusual circumstance for me because it's a real risk if a fight gets canceled. But I essentially had all my lineups created last night. Obviously, I could do some tweaking, but I'm pretty exposed to Leites here. I mean, obviously, I have some Lombard as well. I think this is a good fight to target aside from the narrative. For those of you who don't remember, Lombard lost his last fight by DQ. He knocked out unconscious CB Dalloway after the bell and was disqualified.
Like, not even close, guys.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Yeah, so I am on Leites here. I'm getting minus 117. So that line flip is our first, to your point, our first sense of line value here.
Chris, how do you have our line flip fight?
When you were introing this fight, I thought you were going to say Thales Leites doesn't do anything, which pretty much is where I'm coming from with it. Look, I mean, the thing about Thales Leites is to win fights, he's very takedown dependent. If he can't get his takedown game going, he generally just has like this really slow-paced kickboxing game, which is a lot of like jab and leg kick and very, very, very slow-paced. And he hasn't gotten his wrestling game going all that much. We saw him get it going against Hermanson. I think Hermanson was probably a little bit hurt before that takedown, just the way he came out in that second round, but I don't know that for sure. But regardless, he hasn't been able to take down most of his opponents lately. He couldn't take down Brad Tavares, couldn't take down Sam Alvey. Now those guys are good takedown defenders, but so is Lombard. He's a very short guy.
I will say Lombard, by the way, is a judoka.
Yeah.
He will have good takedown defense for as long as he has gas.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's where I think this fight is going to come in. We actually saw Lombard be pretty aggressive in that fight against Anthony Smith. He was chewing up that lead leg, which I think he's going to have the opportunity to do here. He was coming forward and throwing those hooks, and was really controlling that fight for most of the first two rounds until Smith caught him at the end of the second there and transferred that momentum into the third and knocked him out. But it's hard to rely on Lombard here at 8,400 because I think that DQ I think was officially his sixth loss in a row. So I understand that it's kind of hard to trust him, but I just think Leites does so little if he's not getting his takedown game working that I think Lombard could actually be a decent cash play here because I honestly see him winning this fight if it stays standing.
With the line value, it's hard. Like I've mentioned it a lot of times before. People get burned by line value. I got burned by a line value on Olynyk just last week. So
look to go contrarian to line value in cash. That should be your hot take. I don't think you need to go any further than that. You don't often go contrarian to line value in cash.
Yeah,
maybe in GPPs, but not in cash.
Yeah, it's also hard for me to play Lombard in cash because Lombard's lost 5 straight fights. So I get it. Lombard's live here. It's also Leites is retiring. Something always to be wary of. For me, it's Lombard GPP, Leites in cash. But I get where you're coming from. That Lombard, has probably looked the better as of late. Next up, a fight that probably one of my strongest takes on the card. Gillian Robertson, 8,300, taking on, forget her first name, Mayra Bueno Silva at 7,900. Robertson is the favorite on this one. It has been slowly climbing over the last couple of days, now up to minus 150. I'm glad I bet this where I did. Bueno at plus 140. Joe, women's MMA fight. This one not intentional. We start with you.
Okay, so look, the narrative is wonderful on this fight. You got Gillian Robinson coming off a very impressive win against the Meatball, who didn't roll. We've got her studying at American Top Team, raves from her coaches, Dean Thomas. We've got this Brazilian fighter who came to the UFC to make her debut off of the Dana White Contender Series Brazil. Well, it seems like they have an interesting matchmaking technique. They put the person up that they want to win against either someone who is aged or young, and just essentially lob them softballs. So
we're gonna talk about this later in the fight that I think you have the strongest take on, because
so she got a softball here. She got a softball here. I like Anderson as well. Great mid-range play, 8.3K. I'm sorry, Robertson. Robertson here, 8.3K. Like her a lot. I think this is a good position for her to get her second consecutive victory.
Yeah, she landed the slowest developing ninja choke you're going to see in that Dana White Tuesday Contender Series.
And
fight.
she was 39 years old, her opponent?
Yeah, it was a weird one.
And that's 39 in Brazil years, which is probably like 43, 44 in U.S. years.
I was going to say 61, but okay. Chris, how do you have this fight?
Yeah, I'm a little. I'm not sure why you guys. Well, no, I'm not. I'm just not sure why you guys are so confident about it. I mean, I think that.
I'll tell you why after.
All right. Well, she has a lot of the same problems as the last Brazilian Contender Series debutante that we spoke of, which is she gets backed up a lot when to strikes, and she just sort of shells and sort of she can get caught there. But I mean, Gillian Robertson is not a boxer, not a strong boxer. I think that I think that you know, her positional grappling is solid. We saw that. We've seen that in both her fights now. But I'm just not sure if she's the better grappler here. And if she's not, I don't really know that she wins the fight, because we saw in that matchup with Molly the Meatball that, you know, she basically was selling out for takedowns. Now, Molly's probably, and not probably, she's definitely a better boxer than the opponent here. But I just don't know if Robertson has the tools to exploit the biggest weakness that she's going to need to exploit here. And once they get to the ground, I'm just not sure if she's the better grappler. So
she's by far the better wrestler, Chris.
Yeah, that's so.
By far,
this is a transition to me, because I get what you're saying, but I don't think she needs to exploit that in any way. I think strength for strength, she negates Bueno's biggest strength. When you do that,
which is jiu-jitsu.
She's like, Robertson is the better wrestler. She's going to end up on top. I don't think Bueno's top game or bottom game is good enough to catch Robertson in a sub. I love the Robertsons at ATT. She's well trained, has a little bit of momentum there. They like her in the camp. She's spoken highly of. Look, Robertson.
Sean, is there a better camp for a female fighter in the world? Is there a better camp?
Absolutely not. Will in chat, it says Robertson also has to worry about Brazilian weasel judging. It's something I talked about. I think that's overblown just a little bit. But also, I think it'll be so dominant, Will, that it would. I don't think it'd be a weasel type decision.
By the way, Will, shout out to Will for watching. Will actually, because I watched his pod, Will actually made money. As you know, I don't know if he could cheer too loudly because the fight was in the UK, but Will was actually on Robinson last fight.
Robertson, you got
Robinson. I keep saying Robinson.
You are getting called out in chat too for calling Robinson.
Oh, my Mike Buddha there. No, okay. So Will actually made some money on this fight last time.
Yeah, it was, and you know what? Now I'm jumping on Robertson. I have a bet on Robertson. I think For me, Chris, I get what you're saying. Is that it's kind of strength for strength, and if she can't, she's not going to be able to negate the striking. But I think just her wrestling and grappling is.
Well, let me be clear that I agree that she's probably the better wrestler. She goes in for some nice single legs and gets them. I agree that she's probably the better wrestler. But we've seen Silva hit some good sweeps before on the regional scene, and I just don't know that Robertson is the better grappler. In fact, gun to my head, I would say that maybe she isn't. So I don't know.
I'm thankful it's not a gun to your head, Chris, because I'd really like you on the next podcast.
I disagree with you on this one. I think Robertson's the better grappler. If anything, I could concede that it is, obviously an MMA fight, and Bueno has jiu-jitsu. If anything, she catches a submission. That's the way I think she wins this fight. But moving on, so for me, by the way, 8,300, 7,900, this is a great fight to target. Women's fight, sometimes you're a little wary of, but you got a grappling-based fight. Who cares, men or women? Grappling-based fight. I like to target this one. All right, moving on. Sérgio the Panther Moraes, 9,100, taking on Ben Killaby Saunders at 7,100. The line on this fight as of right now. Saunders is the underdog at plus 245. Moraes minus 265. Another fight that I think the breakdown's pretty clear, but it's the scoring we have to worry about. Chris, where are you going on this fight?
Yeah, I agree. I thought that we might get a little bit of a break here since Saunders won his last fight by knockout, but the price gods weren't fooled, and so we have a big line on Moraes, and it is hard to get there, but he throws power in every shot. We've seen it. He comes forward. He was outstriking Tim Means for a good portion of their fight. And we've seen that Ben Saunders is hittable. He can get battered. He was done so in the fight before the one that he lost against Alan Jouban. And I don't know. I just think Ben Saunders is too slow, too sort of janky in the cage. I think that he's very open to be tagged. It wouldn't shock me to see him get hit with one of Moraes' hard right hands and just get put on the canvas. That's something that we haven't seen before, so it's kind of hard to bank on that. And we haven't seen his jiu-jitsu either, so it's kind of hard to say what would happen if this fight went to the mat, although by reputation it would be Moraes, but we just haven't.
Moraes
is world class.
Yeah,
no, of course, but I'm just saying we haven't seen it in the UFC yet. That's all. But
that's fair. We haven't seen it really in MMA that I can remember.
Right. That's all. But I think that I don't know. For some reason, I just see Ben Saunders walking into or waiting around for one of those, put everything into one straight shots. And,
we did, by the way. We saw him submit Neil Magny. Now that I remember it.
Yep.
Did we?
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
It was 2013 Neil Magny, but it was still Neil Magny. Joe, I get what you're saying though, Chris. I'm struggling a little bit at 9,100 in my builds. Joe?
And that's my greatest fear here is that Moraes has not always shown the best fight IQ, and my fear is that he falls in love with his striking, and he should have enough of an edge on the ground that he should look for takedowns. And if he doesn't, and Sanders just plays an avoidance game, then this could stretch out a little bit. And at 9.1K, I mean, I don't necessarily love this as a fight to target. Now, of course, Saunders can walk into something. I mean, he's had his chin tested. He can walk into something, but I would like to see Moraes go for the takedown and finish him, try to finish him on the ground here. Because I've seen him in past fights not exhibit the best fight IQ. So my pick is Moraes, but it's very tentative.
Yeah, the other issue is somebody just brought it up in chat is that 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu is where Ben Saunders trains out of. His BJJ is legit. It's a tricky style. I just think Moraes is on just a different level. I know Saunders' BJJ is good. On the ground, I have to think that Moraes has the advantage for sure. It's, like you said, on the feet, they both get kind of wild. The Jake Ellenberger Ben Saunders fight was an all-in GPP fight because it was likely to finish. This fight, I don't think it's as likely to finish. Let me real quick.
And by the way, while you're looking that up, Saunders is just one hell of a nice guy. Saunders, you know, he's very engaging on Twitter, and I remember I tweeted out, "Hey, I'm thinking of putting you on my DK lineup. Any thoughts?" And he tweeted back, "I'd be honored."
Yeah, I remember that.
Like, what a cool dude.
Minus 165 to end inside the distance for the fight. Because Moraes, when he can't get a takedown, when he's on the feet, he throws kind of wild.
Yep.
I've seen Saunders, he's got a little bit of pop, but Saunders can be finished. So this is a GPP fight for me because, oddly enough, both guys, it sounds really, I hate to give this kind of general analysis, but it holds true in this fight. Both guys have really low floors and really high ceilings. So not a fight I'm targeting in cash.
It's funny. Just one little addendum to that, just to amplify, I guess, what I've already said. I agree with you about the wild striking, but against somebody who gets hit as readily as Saunders does and how powerful Moraes throws, I actually think that might be a benefit here and not a weakness. So that's how I'm coming.
I don't disagree. Next up, we have Augusto Sakai, 8,800, taking on Chase, the Vanilla Gorilla Sherman at 7,400, who everyone on this panel is going to love. Sakai is the favorite, minus 200. Sherman's your underdog at plus 185. Joe, take it away. Tell us what you think of Chase Sherman.
Come on. I mean, fading Chase Sherman is better than compound interest. It's better than ice cream on a hot day. It's better than warming up after coming in from the winter cold. I mean, I could go on and on. I mean,
please do.
Absent the narrative, because there is narrative, which I'll go on upon shortly. Absent the narrative, if Chase Sherman spent 7 weeks in Jackson Wink sparring with the top 5 heavyweights and was going up against my daughter, who's a yellow belt in Krav Maga, I would bet on my daughter.
Come on.
In this fight. Okay, so that is a bit hyperbole, yes. Okay, I don't need to know a lot about Sakai. I watched. He's got some wins in Bellator. He's fought better competition than Chase Sherman. Chase Sherman got knocked out by a wrestler in his last fight, coming off of a full camp. I'm sorry, he got floored by Justin Willis. Which happened first? I can't remember whether his last fight was in Willis City, right? So Justin Willis, I think, just gassed out punching him. But anyway, look. So here's the narrative on this fight. Chase Sherman has beaten 2 guys in the UFC. One, Damian Grabowski, who he could not put away. Fought him for 3 rounds. If anybody has less head movement than Chase Sherman, it's Damian fucking Grabowski. Okay, who's the other guy he beat in what was a fight of a night fight? Rashad Coulter. Coulter took the fight on 3 fucking days' notice, right? And had to cut weight to make 265. Yes, yes, he beats him.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, I forgot about the buzzer. I'm so passionate about Chase Sherman. Okay, so Sakai has got 1 loss in his UFC career, right? Forget about the Dana White Contender Series. That means nothing. He's got 1 loss in his UFC career, which is a split decision against Czech Congo. Even at Czech Congo's age, he's better than anybody that Chase has fought.
Not his UFC career. I should.
Right. Well, I mean, again, okay, so here's the last part of the narrative. Chase Sherman admitted he took this fight on short notice for a payday, okay? He admitted he had a very incomplete camp. Let's wrap this all around the fact that if this guy was to actually move his, I don't even think he has peripheral vision. If this guy was to move his head once or twice, okay, his only redeeming quality is cardio. That's it. And maybe a little bit of takedown defense, but Sakai is not going to try to take him down. He's just going to bang him into next week. He's fighting at home. He's the Brazilian fighter. Fade Chase. I have got 0 lineups with Chase in mass entry GPPs. 0.
Okay, let's just go to Chris before. This is the first real disagreement me and Joe are going to have on this podcast. But Chris, are you agreeing with Sun Tzu on his hottest of takes to completely fade a heavyweight?
No, and I don't think it's possible to hate Chase Sherman more than Joe does.
I don't hate him. I just think he's great to fade. Compound interest, baby.
I also think that was the first time we've ever gotten 2 F-bombs in the same analysis.
Yeah, the same rant.
Set a record there. But look, while I don't advise fading any heavyweights in all your lineups if you're playing GPPs, I will agree that it's really hard for me to take Chase Sherman in any fight. He just doesn't move his head. He gets hit so often. I mean, the one thing I will say is that most of the guys who knock him out are more athletic than he is, barring Abdul, which is sort of a fluky thing. And I don't think Sakai is that. In fact, I think Sakai is a pretty big boy, so I wouldn't consider him athletic. But what I do think is going to happen here is, I mean, Sakai, we've seen him he's really good in the clinch. He's really good in the tie clinch. I think he can just sort of, grind on him and sort of bang him out from the tie clinch and really dirty box and really get his way to victory that way. And even if it's in space, he throws in combinations. So I just don't see Sherman moving his head. And so if he doesn't, and I don't think he will, I just see him getting knocked out at some point. I'm going to let Sean go because he's chomping at the bit. I just can't. And maybe Sean will convince me. Who knows?
Way to go, Chris. Way to go.
I'm an open-minded guy, but at this point, I just can't take.
Chase is the new poster boy for CTE.
I think the fade is a bad move. Look, first, let's start with Augusto Sakai here. This is why I like this new format, so you can breeze through some of these other fights we're going to talk about and get to stuff like this. Chase Sherman has other redeeming qualities, and I'm going to make both of you say this. He does, in my opinion, something, I can't say he's the best heavyweight at it, but he is top 3 in terms of throwing leg kicks. He throws a good, hard leg kick, which you don't see a lot at heavyweight. He also is going to be a hell of a lot faster than Sakai in this matchup. Cannot dispute at all that he does not move his head ever. Ever, ever, ever. Someone in chat says Chase has a good chin. Well, even I have to say,
he's got good hair. That's what he's got.
Hang on, Joe. He used to have a good chin. He was in wars with
Walt Harris.
Walt Harris, he's a big boy who hits hard.
I know.
Like my point is that Chase has taken the fight against Ledet where he ate 120 strikes. Again, Ledet is a light heavyweight boxer, but those fights put most people out. I think the accumulation that he's taken already as the new poster boy for CTE is the most worrying part here. Sakai is also on the Brazilian Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series. He beat up an old man.
Agreed.
We don't really know what he is yet. I know he was in there against Czech Congo, old Czech Congo. I just, with the speed advantage Sherman is going to have and his ability to use leg kicks, he could really compromise Sakai early, and Sakai, even if he wins, might not pay off value. That's if Sherman comes in with that game plan. I get the narrative that he took this fight on short notice and needs a payday. That's all worrisome stuff, but just fight breakdown-wise, I see a path for Chase to be live. So I'm not on the fade, especially when there's not a ton of dogs I like. And part of me just likes rooting for Chase Sherman. Before this line value flipped on Leites, I was considering Sherman in cash. I think I can get away from that now.
God,
it's the speed and leg kicks just interest me. So I'm not going to fade. Joe can fade. And guys, if Chase Sherman wins this fight at Sunsu, SUNTSZU.
Oh, it'll be the biggest pork chop I've ever eaten because my hot take, I'm giving you my hot take now. Chase Sherman will score less than 10 DraftKings points. That's my hot take.
So tweet the crap out of him.
Beat me up, baby. Beat me up.
All right. Let's move on. That was fun. Now we have Ryan Spann, 8,700, taking on Luis Henrique, 7,500. Henrique coming from heavyweight to light heavyweight. Looks to be in great shape. Ryan Spann making his UFC debut. Spann is the favorite, minus 145. Henrique at plus 135. I've seen a lot of love for Henrique floating around. Joe, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do, actually. He looked good on the scales, too. I mean, he was obviously carrying around some extra weight. He is a Brazilian Olympic wrestler. Let's not forget that Henrique actually took down Ngannou, in his first fight at heavyweight. I think he's got some solid wrestling. I think this weight cut to light heavyweight is where he belongs. It's only going to help his speed and stamina. Spann, on the other hand, is a 2-time Dana White Contender Series alumnus. The first time he got viciously KO'd by Carl Robertson. And the fact that he is 6'5" makes him all that much easier to take down and slam. So I think at 7.6 with line value creeping up in his favor, Henrique is live. I would certainly have some shares of Spann in case, Henrique, goes back to, the Henrique that everybody knew and loved at heavyweight. But I definitely think he's live at 7.6K.
Are you all worried about the gas tank? Because he's shown a bad gas tank at heavyweight.
Well, I'm thinking that this could only help. I mean, carrying around that less weight on that frame, fighting at home, not having to travel. Didn't he? I think he also had a fight in Colorado, which is killer for a heavyweight. But I like the way he looked on the scale. He looked good. I wouldn't say he looks like the second coming of Charles Atlas, but you could actually see abs.
Do you think he's cash viable?
Yes.
Chris, what do you have on this fight?
Yeah, Henrique looks really weird at light heavyweight. I have to say that it's hard to recognize him. So I went back and I looked because he fought at light heavyweight in the regionals, and so I went back and I looked at some of those fights, and he moves pretty well. He's actually pretty quick at light heavyweight. He likes to pressure a lot. The problem I have is that he still throws wide punches, and I think Spann's a pretty decent counter puncher. Spann's got the loss that he took on the Contender Series was sort of like an overzealous where he rushed into the clinch for a takedown and then sort of got hit by elbows. I don't think Henrique's doing any of that.
No, if this turns out into a striking fair, it's going to be a long night for Henrique.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think he throws a nice, hard, solid 1-2. I think his boxing is pretty sharp. I don't know about we've seen. One of the reasons why I liked Henrique so much at heavyweight, at least when he first came in, was because of that wrestling prowess. But we've seen him get tired if he has to take you down more than once, and he can't hold you there. We've seen that in a couple of fights now. Most recently, the Tybura fight that happened. As Sean alluded to, we don't really know if his gas tank's going to hold up. We haven't seen him at light heavyweight in a while, but I think Spann's the better athlete. He's also a wrestler in his own right. I've never seen him defend takedowns, full disclosure, so I'm not sure how well he'll do with that, but I'm going to go with the more athletic, better striker, and that's Spann.
See, my one concern with this is that Henrique's going to look for those takedowns, and Spann, the one thing he doesn't defend takedowns great, but he sinks in a lot of chokes on his way to the ground. From what I watch, he can hit a submission. If this fight ends up on the ground and his shoulders are flat, Henrique's got a big advantage. But on the way there, he's in trouble. And on the feet, Spann, I think, has an advantage, plus the gas tank issues. For me, this is a pretty even fight. And with the prices the way they are, I like Henrique more as a GPP play. I don't know if I can go there and cash because I have such a hard time trusting that guy who fades so damn quickly. So that's almost why I like Thales Leites and the line values there just as comparison. But Lombard's the guy with the gas tank issue in this fight. Here, if there's a gas issue, it's Henrique. And that worries me a little bit in cash games. But I like both guys, like this fight for GPPs. If I had to pick a winner, I think I picked Spann on my own podcast. I'll probably give me Henrique as the line has moved and
plus 130 now.
Yeah. Give me Henrique in Brazil to win a close decision where, they each have success one round and the second one's kind of split takedown versus stand up. So close fight. Next up, more narrative. Francisco Trinaldo, 8,900, taking on Evan Dunham at 7,300. Evan Dunham has announced this is his last fight, which is sad. I like fading him. I made a crap ton of money sitting next to Joe, actually, watching Olivia Mercier knock him out in Brooklyn. That was fun for DraftKings. This fight will be Dunham's last. He's been hurt to the body a ton. Plus 175. Trinaldo at minus 190. Dunham does get hurt to the body a lot. By the way, Francisco Trinaldo is a different fighter in Brazil. He just is. He is an old man, but he is an animal down there. Chris, we'll start with you for this one.
Yeah, I think if you just watch the James Vick fight, you're going to get a misleading representation of Master Nduba's striking, because in that fight he really went to wild overhands a lot, And I think the reason he did that was because he wasn't sure how to close the distance. And so it led to a lot of awkward striking exchanges. But generally, I think he's actually a pretty smooth boxer. He's good at landing that right hand up the middle, and I think that's going to be key against Dunham, who likes to throw like these wide hooks and doesn't bring his hands back up to his face after he retracts. So I think Massaranduba is going to be really open to hit Dunham with a hard counter here, or 2 or 3. And I also think he's the better grappler. I think he's the better transition guy on the mat. So if this does go to the ground, I favor Massaranduba terribly. I think I favor him everywhere. So I think this is going to be a pretty simple pick for me, and I'm going to say Massaranduba possibly by knockout.
I disagree with you a little bit in that one. I think Dunham, his path to victory is takedowns, and he showed he can control some guys. Rick Glenn, Ross Pearson. I get that they're not exactly, but Trinaldo's better on his feet. I think Evan Dunham could make this a dirty type of grappling fight and have a little bit of success. The problem is it's his last fight. Trinaldo's a different guy in Brazil. The pick for me is Trinaldo. Joe, what do you have on this one?
Well, taking the narrative off the table, and looking for some value under 7.5K, Dunham is it for me. The narrative is a little disturbing. Obviously his last fight, he's in a dispute with the UFC over unpaid hospital bill, I believe. Came out and said he didn't even watch 5 minutes of tape on Trinaldo, despite the fact that, if there's one guy on this card where there's a lot of tape, it's this fight. So I'm a little concerned with the narrative. And also I think people are going to be off of Dunham because of the Mercier, KO, but that's very uncharacteristic for Dunham. I think he's going to fight better here. I could see him grinding out a decision. Trinaldo is 55 years old, and sooner or later, that's got to affect him. He's only lost to good fighters. I have all the respect in the world for him. Read up on him. It's a heartbreaking story. He had to walk to training because he couldn't afford the bus. I mean, it's a really solid story. Him making good, favela boy. I like him a lot. So I'm going with Dunham for the upset, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me if Trinaldo won.
Somebody did bring up a good point in chat. Nicole again. Are you worried about Trinaldo's output? It is worth noting he is not, outside of the Yancy Medeiros fight. Yancy Medeiros does that to people. He's got decisions, wins, 40 strikes, 36 strikes, 50 strikes, 63 strikes.
Oh, I would be underweight to him because unless he gets a knockout, he's not going to score well.
So, yes, in terms of floor, absolutely a little bit worried about Trinaldo and the output. Next up, one of the guys I love to fade. I love fading Charles do Bronx Oliveira at 9,400. He takes on the returning to the UFC Christos Giagos at 6,800. Do Bronx is rightfully the large favorite in this fight before I can't get too carried away here. He is the rightful large favorite. Current line, I always have it, minus 400. Giagos plus 355. It's an under 1.5 prop. Joe, what do you have on this fight?
Look, I mean, I think this is a bit of a softball for do Bronx. This guy coming back to the UFC is not actually coming back on this super impressive unbeaten streak with lots of finishes. I mean, he's fought in some decent organizations.
2-1 out of ACB.
Yeah, so okay. I mean, we all know what do Bronx's game is, right? I mean, if he gets in the least bit of trouble or adversity, he tends to fold and give up. That's why he is historically a great fade. I mean, he's got a very clear path to victory. Home, I like him here. I mean, he's my pick. I think I like him more than Zaleski in terms of a play on DraftKings. He's also $100 cheaper. So I like do Bronx.
Yeah, I'll go last. Chris, what do you got?
Yeah, I actually think do Bronx is a little underrated. I always have. I think his striking is underrated. I think he's got good body kicks. I think he delivers good, crisp, straight punches. And Giagos is a guy who lets himself get backed up. He lets himself get backed up, and then he tries to swing his way out with these winging hooks, and I guess he can catch. But I would actually favor DuBronx in the striking. I think his striking is a little underrated, as I said. Also think, it wouldn't surprise me if Giagos is a little stronger in the wrestling department, but I obviously favor DuBronx on the mat, and so in conclusion, I just think that DuBronx is going to have too many advantages here. I think Joe's point is a good one. I think we have seen him fold when he gets tested. He wasn't tested much.
And over again.
We have. He wasn't tested much in that last win against Clay Guida. He finished him pretty quickly. So, he might need that. And for that reason, Giagos isn't a bad, counterplay if, the fight lasts. But that also, I think, puts some impetus on or some it adds more value, I think, to DuBronx, because if he does finish, it's going to be first round. So that would make him a nice GPP play, I think. He's going to be my pick to win the fight. But for the reasons mentioned, I don't think Giagos is a bad counterplay.
Like, this fight is minus 485 to end inside the distance. Oliveira, who I'm going to have both sides of this fight, I want to be really clear. This is one of the fights I'm going to have a lot of exposure to. He's either going to get a quick sub or he's not going to, and he's going to get, not TKO'd because he just lays there and gives up, or we've seen it against Paul Felder, Ricardo Lamas, Anthony Pettis. I won't hold the Holloway one against him. That was a first round knockout, different level. But we've seen it's not just that he loses to those guys; it's how he loses. If Giagos can survive early, he can get a second round win in 6,800. That's in the nuts lineup. So I'm going to mix them into GPPs. I'm probably not going there in cash unless you want to super punt, but I don't think you need to on this card. So for that reason, as somebody's talking in my ear, I don't know who that was. I got both sides of this fight. Next up, it is Randa Marcos at 8,000 taking on Marina Rodriguez at 8,200. Marcos is now the favorite, minus 110 to the ever slightest amount of odds value here. Rodriguez plus 100, another UFC debut. Randa Marcos, I think every MMA pod I've listened to this week has mentioned this. Alternates wins and losses, would be due for a win. Is she going to continue that trend, Chris?
No, I don't think so. I think, last week that we saw an undefeated fighter come in who I wasn't really high on, who ended up getting the win. But this is an undefeated fighter who I am really high on, and I'm actually really excited to see. I think she uses her length well. She fights long. She has a nice 1-2 that she snaps off. She's excellent in the clinch. She's relentless. She can wrestle. She's got great top pressure when she gets her opponent to the ground. The long limbs are great for submissions. Obviously, I'm just really excited to see her, and I just don't think Randa Marcos does enough of anything. Obviously, she's a wrestler, control grappler, but her takedowns have been coming fewer and further between these days. And once she gets her opponents to the ground, doesn't do a whole lot. I just think that the debutante's going to have way too many advantages here, and I actually like this fight for a stoppage.
That's a pretty strong take as well. You can pick between a couple hot takes. Joe?
Give me Marcos here. I need to see a fight, like a fight against real competition, before I can get any sense of feel for how this Brazilian. I mean, again, this is another Dana White Contender Series. Is this the one who fought the 20-year-old that just actually quit in the ring?
Yeah.
Let me see. 21 years old, who she fought, who just actually said no more. So I don't know. I mean, Marcos is tough. She beat Carla Esparza. She's got a solid wrestling game. No issues that I could see at weigh-ins. Look, I don't love this fight, and it's not a really strong pick. And I don't know that this would be a great fight unless you're like Chris and think you're going to get a finish out of it. I don't see this as a great fight to target. You've got 13 other fights on this card, so you could certainly pass on this one. But my pick is going to be Marcos.
Yeah, I agree with you. I will have a little bit of Marcos because of that. She's been in there with better competition. I think she's not untalented. She's just in close fights with good competition, and she's going to look to grapple, which on DraftKings, to me, at a mid-range, is always something that I'm going to at least consider. I'll have a little bit of Randa Marcos. She's my pick to win the fight, but it's nothing overwhelming on this one. All right, we're finally up to the main card. Andre Ewell at 7,700 taking on Renan Barão at 8,500. I said the same line on my podcast. I'm going to continue it. My, how the mighty have fallen. Renan Barão against a UFC newcomer is minus 155. Yeah, this should be minus 400. I don't understand. It was even lower at some point. I got a really good line on this fight as well. At least in my mind, it opened at minus 350. By the way, Renan Barão, one of the big concerns was his cut to bantamweight. Yeah, he missed weight by like 6.5 pounds. So don't worry about that. I think Barão smokes him. Honestly, I know it's hard to hear say that because of how he's looked recently. And I'll get to some more of the technical stuff behind that. But I want to start this breakdown by saying I really like Renan Barão in this matchup. Joe, we'll start with you for this one.
Well, once I found out he missed weight and obviously didn't try, because again, I said it, I'm going to sound like a broken record. I'd rather have, especially at this weight class, I'd rather have a guy miss big than miss small. So he is giving 30% of his purse up to Mr. Ewell. So I actually added some Barão to my lineups once I heard that he missed weight. So my pick here is Barão. If he does not have a relatively easy time here, then he should just hang it up.
Chris?
Yeah, this is another one where, I'm not judging. I'm just anxious to hear why you favor Barão quite so much. I'll go a little bit first. I just think that in his last fight against Keller, and we've seen this for a while now too. I mean, he was just getting hit with the same strikes over and over and over again. Overhand right, uppercut for the entire fight, and was basically out on his feet in the third round. The fight could have been stopped with seconds left. It wasn't, so it doesn't go in the books that way. But, I mean, he was just taking so much damage. It was like he wasn't seeing the strikes coming. And
I will ask you this. Did you watch any or of a lot of Andre Ewell?
I know that he's very fast. He's got very fast hands, and that's what I'm counting on here. I think he can – look, I'll let you go in 1 second. I just think that Barão, look, he's the classic Muay Thai striker. He wants to stand there flat-footed, and I think that Ewell can overwhelm him here. And look, the fact that he was getting pressured up and just strike after strike after strike against Keller is really concerning to me, because I think Ewell's going to try to do much of the same thing. He's going to pressure, and he's just going to try to rain strikes. I really don't think a stoppage is out of the realm of possibility here. I know that Barão, look, he showed off a good leg kick in that last fight. He's got a good, crisp, straight right hand, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. I think that Ewell can come out here and swarm him and overwhelm him, and that's what I think I'm going with. So go ahead.
Look, did you happen to notice any defense or the defense of Ewell?
I didn't happen to notice any defense from Barão in his last fight either.
He has none. He has no defense. And more worrying, what I think no one's talked about yet, at least here, is that Barão's a good wrestler. He took down Aljamain Sterling in the first round. Ewell, God, his takedown defense isn't good. I think that's the biggest advantage in this fight. And this is Renan Barão's second camp at ATT. They're not going to miss that. I think Renan Barão, we're actually going to see him go in, shoot for some takedowns. On the feet, yes, he's taking too much damage, but I'm not too worried about the chin. The non-cutting down to bantamweight, all the way down to bantamweight, helps his chin. They stand and trade. Yeah, it's a much closer fight, much like Kelleher. But Ewell doesn't have any defense either. Is he going to stand in there for 3 rounds? He's making his UFC debut. He's in Brazil.
Oh, wow. I totally forgot the ATT. I actually mentioned on my Alpha Pod that he was a longtime Novo and Yal fighter.
No, this is now his. This is his second camp at ATT, and this is where a lot of times you see that jump, especially at ATT.
Yeah.
So I like Burrell a bunch. I think he's got a safe floor. I mean, MMA, anybody can crack anyone, but I like Kenan Burrell a bunch in this spot.
The wrestling point is well taken, but is he going to be a dedicated wrestler for 3 rounds? I just don't see it. I just don't see it.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point.
I think if he gets on top, he could get a finish.
He might. I just think that, you know, he's going to get pressured, and we're going to have to see how he responds to it. And
I do concede that it's incredibly hard to see because of how he has looked lately. All right, we are 14 fights. Jesus, is going along. But we got this fight shouldn't take too long, guys. Sam Alvey, 9,200, taking on Rogerio de Nogueira, Little Nog at 7,000. Alvey, the big favorite. The line on this fight last time I looked was about -300, -350 for Alvey, +320 for Nogueira. Chris, how do you have this fight?
With me sleeping and waking up in time for the next one. You know, do I have to make a pick here? We talk about Sam Alvey a lot. You know, he's just the ultimate counter striker. He's gonna let himself get backed up the entire fight, looking for that one shot. And if it never comes, he's okay with it because he'll just either win by 2 more strikes than you or lose, and he doesn't seem to care one way or the other. It's difficult to know what we're going to get, of course, from Little Nog here. Last time we saw him, he got, you know, I'm pretty sure Ryan Bader committed a crime against him in certain states, just wrestling him and beating the tar out of him until it was finally mercifully stopped. Before that, he showed off some actual pretty okay boxing against Patrick Cummins. He does have a jab that he likes to flick out there. He'll throw the overhand, which is what he caught Cummins with, and eventually finished him. I don't expect. I mean, Alvey's a tough guy to finish anyway, and we haven't seen him in so long. I don't expect Little Nog to get a finish here, but I do expect him to. I don't expect him to really push either, because neither one of these guys really push. He probably pushes more than Sam Alvey does, but I don't know. This has all the makings of sort of a slow, boring fight, but I think Nogueira, and I can't believe I'm saying this, is probably a little bit better of a boxer. So I think I would go dog or pass here, but ultimately I'm going to be in bed for this.
Nogueira, by the way, also looked terrible on the scales today. Joe?
Well, look, I think Nogueira is the UFC equivalent of a fire axe. They keep him behind glass, and every 2 years when they have a card in Brazil, they break the glass and let him fight. I agree with you. This could potentially be an extremely boring fight because Alvey is a counterpuncher. I do not see, or at least I hope, that Nogueira will not rush him like Prochnow and just get knocked the heck out. If that doesn't happen, this could be a greasy kind of back and forth, top, tap, touch, 3-round decision. Again, who knows what's going to happen in Brazil. If it's close, Alvey generally fights backing up. My pick is Alvey. I don't know that I want a lot of exposure to this fight. On one hand, it would not surprise me if Alvey got the finish, even though that's not necessarily in his DNA. Little Nog would actually have to make a mistake pretty much for Alvey to get the finish. He's not going to pursue it. And on the other hand, it could be one of these, like Chris said, this is like, okay, you got 2 fights left, you're 12 fights in, you've had a lot of chili for dinner, and now's the time to go kind of, take a sabbatical.
Yeah, Alvey, what's frustrating is both these guys could end up on the optimal, because if Nogueira gets a decision, even if it's slow pace and not a lot of dogs win at 7,000, he's right there. And Alvey, if Nogueira's totally shocked because he's 6,000 years old and lands that left hand early, he could end up with 102 to 105, and that could be good enough at 9,200. But it's in the realm of outcomes for both guys. But I do agree. I think the most likely outcome is what we've covered. I'll have a little bit of each side of this fight just based on where their salaries are. It's not a fight I'm willing to fade, but it's not one I want to be overexposed to. Next up, co-main event, Alex Oliveira, 9,300, taking on Carlo Petersali Jr., 6,900. Alex Oliveira, minus 410. Peter Sali, plus 365. I have seen way too much love than Carlo Peter Sali. I'm going to take a second here. I know we're short on time, but guys, he has been in close fights with Nicholas Dalby and Brad Scott. While these two guys are talking, I want you to keep that in your mind. I don't even know where they stand on this fight, but I've seen plenty of people that I know and some sharp guys on Peter Sali, and I don't get it. I'm going to have some shares because he's decent at range and he's super cheap. But Alex Oliveira is good. He's the guy, I think, on this card more than Charles, who is just constantly underrated. I saw him knock Ryan LaFleur out cold in Long Island. It was a nasty knockout. So I think he's underrated. Joe, what do you have for this fight?
Look, unless he takes this fight too lightly, there's no reason why Oliveira should not win and get a finish. I actually do like him.
Thank God. Let's see if Chris tilts me.
I do like him slightly more than DuBronx just because I don't see Oliveira. I mean, I don't know if he quit against Cerrone. That was a short notice fight. He seemed happy to be there. They obviously made him a pretty good financial incentive for being in the main event in that fight, Cowboy versus Cowboy in Pittsburgh. But other than that, again, he's kind of a funky guy. I mean, he's got, 3 kids from 3 different women. They all live on the same block, which is kind of interesting sociology dynamics. He's always like asking women out in the stands. I mean, if he takes this fight semi-seriously, he should just dispose of this guy. So my pick is Cowboy Oliveira.
Chris?
Well, as much as I love tilting you, I don't think actually I have shockingly few underdogs on this card. I don't like it, but we'll see what we can do going forward. But yeah, no, I'm picking Cowboy here. I just love his pressure. I think he is a really good wrestler, grappler. We've seen him get stuck on the bottom and sort of look helpless, but that's against really good wrestlers, so I'm not worried about that. I just think that Peter Sali is just he likes to throw kicks. He likes to throw these weird, not weird per se, but hooks, and that really isn't how you catch Cowboy. Who did he fight where that was the big war and Medeiros. Medeiros was doing it with straight punches up the middle. I don't think Peter Sali is going to do that. I think he likes to go more for the hooks, and I just think that Cowboy is going to put a pace on you, and he's got the length, and he can grapple and he can wrestle, and he hits really, really hard, and so I like him a lot here.
Yeah, so do I. He's been one of my favorite guys to target on DraftKings for a while. Look, he's strong in the clinch. I ran through this on a different podcast. He changes your career. Like, he's retired some people. People have not looked the same after fighting him. I mean, Carlos Condit, he wasn't the same, but violent fights, high output, he can grapple. Peter Sali needs to keep this at range. I'll have a little bit of him, but I like Alex Cowboy Oliveira a ton. And that brings up our main event. Thiago Santos, 8,600. Eric, ya boy Anders, at 7,600. I still enjoy hearing Bruce Buffer say ya boy every time. I hope he's on hand for this card. The line on this fight, Thiago Santos, minus 160. Eric Anders, plus 150. Technique-wise, you have to give it to Santos. Anders in close fights with Tim Williams. I will say, I'll wrap up at the end like I've been doing, but tape and just what I've seen technique-wise, Santos should win this fight, and it should be a comfortable pick at minus 160. I've yet to bet it. I don't know if I'm going to because my gut is telling me Anders is going to win this fight, and that's just pure gut. Chris, how's your breakdown on the main event?
Yeah, my gut's not telling me anything like that, except that I'm a little hungry. Yeah, I think this is a pretty comfortable fight for Santos. We've seen how you get to Santos. David Branch did it. You pressure him and you strike, and while he tries to throw these wild hooks at you to try to like back you off, and leaves himself open, and you knock him out. But in order to get that pressure from Santos, you really have to take it from him. Like, you really have to be a dedicated pressure fighter and really control the space. Otherwise, he's going to do it. And I don't think Eric Anders is that guy who's going to aggressively control the space. We saw his fight against Natal, who basically backs himself up. Then his fight against Lyoto Machida, who always backs himself up. So I don't know if he's a pressure fighter as much as his opponents were willing to relent and give it to him. And Santos isn't going to do that. And if he doesn't, Anders has almost certainly never fought anybody like this, who's just going to blitz out into a buzzsaw, really make him react and put him in a bunch of bad spots. I just don't think Anders is ready for this kind of test. We've seen him be a tentative striker in pretty much every fight. He picked it up a little bit in the last fight against Tim Williams in the third because he had to. But we've seen him be a tentative striker in the UFC. And, he's got a little bit of wrestling, which he could use here. But ultimately, I just see Thiago Santos pretty much storming the castle and maybe getting him out of there.
Yeah, somebody asked if we see Santos looking for takedowns. I don't think so. I think he wants to stand up with Anders. Anders is incredibly strong. I agree with you guys. It's just, like I said, it's just my gut saying Santos, we've seen him be knocked out. David Branch got him. We've seen him weird fights with Anthony Smith. Chris, real quick, do you have I know you're probably exposed to both sides in GPPs. Cash games, stackable? Santos,
Stackable?
what do you think?
No, I don't think so. I just don't. The problem here is that we haven't seen Anders get finished either. So it's not like we can rely on that. But we have seen him have a little bit of a gas tank issue. I mean, so there's a little bit of a risk involved, I suppose, to get too exposed or do anything tricky like stacking. But I mean, as far as the fight pick, I really don't see how you can go any other way.
Joe?
Yeah, well, I mean, Chris stole some of my thunder. I mean, I don't see Anders as having the proper fighting style to take advantage of Santos's deficiencies. And he would have to fight outside of himself, which I honestly don't see him doing for this fight. Even though it's at light heavyweight at 205, there was still a weight cut for Anders. I mean, he was 220 pounds, in Brazil. So he had a few pounds to cut. He has fought in Brazil before, which is good. I think Santos is going to chew his legs up with kicks. The way I look at it is Santos early, Anders late. If this drags out, into a 5-round fight and there's a decision, would it surprise me if Anders won 3 rounds to 2? No. But I think if it plays out inside of the distance, then your winner is going to be Santos.
All right, guys. Hot take time. We have Joe's hot take. You want to remind everybody real quick?
Yeah. Chase Sherman will score under 10 DK points. And by the way, I'm 2-0 for my last 2 weeks hot takes. Last week was a sub 9K fighter would score the highest points as a function of X. So I got that. And
looking back on it, I don't know how hot that was, but we'll give it to you.
Oh, I mean, look at all those 9K fighters you had. Actually, you forget about even as a function of X. He just outright scored more than anyone.
Marzaliev was great.
Yeah.
Chris?
Yeah. Thank you, Sean, for handing me my hot take or reminding me what my hot take should be. I'm going to go with it. I'm going to say Marina Rodriguez by let's say finish, knockout. I was deciding between knockout or let's say knockout.
That's a super hot take.
Joe, is that hot or is this hotter? Henan Barao and Gillian Robertson combined for 200 DraftKings points.
Wow, that's pretty hot.
I give it to you.
That's a hot take. It's a hot take. I like it. It's a hot take. I like it.
2 fighters. And if that happens, by the way, I'm going to have a very good day. So it's win-win.
You and me both.
Right, we are off next week. Everyone, I know sometimes I beg or ask for followers a bunch on Twitter, but if you want to see some cool behind-the-scenes stuff, I'm going to the NASCAR Championships next weekend.
Yeah,
at the DFS Sniper 1S. I'm going to tweet a bunch of stuff. I am going to really kind of be all over it. Behind-the-scenes stuff, videos, pictures, ask any questions. It should be a really cool experience. And then the following week, it's the big one. Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor. And I want everyone just process this because I'm going. It's going to be my pet peeve the whole fight week. We are going to minimize the fight breakdown because if you don't know the fight breakdown, you should not play DFS, or you're probably a fish. Everyone knows how the two ways this fight is going to go. We're going to analyze it from a DFS perspective, how to play it. So everyone just kind of get that in your mind as we enjoy UFC Sao Paulo. Good luck in your contest, guys. This was fun. I'll see you next week.
1 second. Hey, yep. Chris, can we ask Jake to maybe give us some RotoWire swag that we could kind of raffle off here, to our loyal listening audience? Maybe we could, get some shirts, some hats, whatever, and just kind of spread the love a little bit. Maybe you can run that by Jake.
Yeah.
You
guys do it. Everyone go find Jake Latarski on Twitter. He manages this program. Say you want some raffle items for the live. You have to be watching live in 2 weeks. Fight IQ, and maybe we'll have a contest. We'll ask some kind of trivia and do
we'll
it.
Call your names down, actually. Yep.
So I will. Last thing, we're wrapping up. Chat. I'd ask Chris. I also agree. Not stacking the main event. So enjoy this card, UFC Sao Paulo. We'll see you in 2 weeks for UFC 229. Guys, thanks. It was fun. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Out.